Okay, you can hear me now. Okay. Before we start, just put your phone on silent or on vibrating and so on, so it doesn't ring. And I'm really thrilled to be part of this event. I mean, these are very close friends, longtime friends, comrades, and so on. So, you know, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome two distinguished voices whose experience, scholarship, and public service have long enriched our understanding of the Middle East and its complex political landscape, especially now, right? Ambassador Massoud Maalouf, right there, brings decades of diplomatic expertise and firsthand knowledge of Lebanon's political strategic challenges. Throughout his career, Ambassador Maalouf, he has offered insightful analysis of regional conflicts, international diplomacy, and a delicate balance between national sovereignty and regional security. His experience navigating the intersection of regional and international politics provides a valuable perspective on the challenges confronting Lebanon and the broader Middle East. Joining him is our very own Dr. Edmund Ghareeb, one of the foremost scholars and commentators on the Middle East affairs. Edmund is probably on maybe 2 or 3 times a day on this station or that station explaining these issues. So, Dr. Ghareeb's extensive work on Arab politics, Palestinian issues, regional transformation, and United States policy in the Middle East has helped generations better understand the forces shaping the region. His scholarship combines historical depth and a keen awareness of contemporary development, making him an indispensable guide through the complexities of today's crisis. Their perspectives are particularly valuable at a moment of extraordinary uncertainty and transformation. The Middle East is witnessing a convergence of military, political, and diplomatic developments whose consequences may shape the region for years to come. Lebanon faces intensified Israeli military operations, continued occupation of parts of its territory, and profound questions about its future security architecture. At the same time, Gaza remains devastated by war, humanitarian catastrophe, and unresolved questions concerning ceasefire implementation, reconstruction, governance, and Palestinian self-determination. Beyond this immediate crisis lies a broader regional picture: the evolving understanding between Washington and Tehran, ongoing diplomatic efforts in Geneva, the future role of regional actors, and the capacity of the international community to move beyond temporary ceasefires toward a durable and comprehensive peace. Equally important is the question of whether emerging diplomatic initiatives can address the root causes of conflict rather than merely manage recurring cycles of violence and instability. Tonight, Ambassador Maalouf and Dr. Ghareeb will help us examine these critical developments, their interconnected nature, and their implications for Lebanon, Palestine, and the wider Middle East. We are fortunate to have two such thoughtful and experienced, and my friends, observers with us, and I can think of no better guide of a conversation on the challenges and possibilities that lie ahead. And without further ado, we shall begin and turn the mic over to Ambassador Massoud Maalouf.
Good evening, everyone. Saeed, thank you very, very much for the introduction. And thank you for something else also. I receive every day from you 2 articles, one in Arabic and one in English, which explain everything that we need to know. So thank you very much for this. And I should say that I am really honored to be with Dr. Edmund Ghareeb tonight, talk to you, because really Dr. Edmund Ghareeb is a very important person who knows the area very well, who has written, who has taught, and who has spoken about all the problems that you are facing. So I am really honored to be with him on the same stage. I will focus in my talk on Lebanon, since I am I have spent 40 years as a diplomat for Lebanon, so I know a little bit of Lebanon, because even if you live all your life in Lebanon, it doesn't mean that you know Lebanon very well, because it's so complicated, so complex, and so difficult, and things change between one day and the other that it's hard to tell how or to be able to forecast what might happen. So I will speak briefly about what's going on now in Lebanon with Israel, of course, and we will then questions, answers. We'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. You know that the current things that happened in Lebanon, we don't need to go to the history and to the establishment of Israel and the Palestinian questions and the connection between Palestine and Lebanon, and the problems that happened ever since the civil wars in Lebanon that have taken place. In my life, I have seen civil war since 1958. I was already a young person, and I remember very well since the civil war of 1958, and then a peace of quiet, then another civil war, then another civil war. So it's not easy, not fun either. But anyway, I will start with the 8th of October 2023. We know that on the 7th of October what Hamas did in Israel, and on the 8th of October, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hezbollah is the party that was established in 1982 to fight against the Israeli occupation then of Lebanon. So Hezbollah supported Hamas, and they started sending some rockets and doing some military activities against north of Israel. And then Israel started this one, a very serious attacks on Lebanon by air and by land, and all kinds of weapons. They did a lot of destructions. And we know that at some point with their technology and what they call the pagers or the beepers, they were able to annihilate the leadership of Hezbollah. And soon afterwards, there was a ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel on the 27th of November 2024. That ceasefire was violated by Israel almost on a daily basis. The people who register the violation of Israel speak about 12 to 14,000 violations of the ceasefire by Israel in the 15 months. During that period, Hezbollah didn't reply. Hezbollah was really respecting the ceasefire. But then the war on Iran started, the Israeli-American war on Iran started, and excuse me, I call it the Israeli-American war, unlike many people and many newspapers that call it the American-Israeli war, because it was Israeli more than American. Israel pulled America into this war. Netanyahu pulled our president in the war, and the president went to this war. So when this war took place, and when the leadership of Iran was also killed by Israel and the United States, Hezbollah threw 6 rockets on Israel, and they made an official statement saying that we are avenging the killing of the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Since then, Israel took this as an excuse to start its war in Lebanon. So it attacked Lebanon in a very savage way, displacing 1,200,000 people from South Lebanon. 1,200,000 people is the 5th of the population of Lebanon. Imagine the 5th of the population of the United States being displaced. And then they started destroying buildings. Whoever left their house, their villages, it was completely destroyed. The zone that is close to the Israeli border, all the houses are completely destroyed, to the point where we have now 11,000 buildings completely destroyed. We're not talking of the buildings that have been damaged a little bit or a lot. I'm talking destroyed. 11,000 buildings. And the people who were killed so far about 4,200 Lebanese people have been killed since the 2nd of March, and 1,275 people, 12,175 people injured. All this in the space of 3 months since the 2nd of March. So that's a huge destruction of Lebanon, and Israel is still there. We know that the United States has tried to do some negotiations between Israel and Lebanon. The president of Lebanon found out that he thinks that the negotiations is the best way because neither the Lebanese army nor Hezbollah have the capability of stopping Israel. They have the most modern weapons, the most killing weapons, the most advanced technology. So neither the army nor Hezbollah can stop completely Israel from destroying Lebanon. So the president said we better negotiate. He called on the negotiations, and the United States was really positive on this idea, and the first round of negotiations started here in the State Department. It was sponsored and by the United States in the State Department. The first round was in the presence of the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and then there was a second round, a third round. The first 2 rounds were mostly just to explain each delegation to the other delegation what the problem, what they want. And Lebanon wanted, from the beginning, Lebanon wanted a consolidation of the ceasefire, because there was a ceasefire that Israel never respected. Lebanon wanted the withdrawal of the Israeli army from the Lebanese territory. Lebanon wanted to allow the population to return to their houses in the south, and the reconstruction. Israel was talking always about normalization relations with Lebanon, and this is something that Lebanon is not ready for at this time. Now, today, we had, since yesterday, we started the 5th round of negotiations with the Israeli. The first 2 rounds were only headed by the ambassadors of Israel and Lebanon in the presence of the State Department officials. The first time Marco Rubio, the next time he was out of the country, it was with his assistant. And third time it was in the White House. President Trump himself hosted the negotiation teams, and he announced with his words the extension of the ceasefire for 45 days, but Israel accepted in words, but continued to destroy and to attack Lebanon without stopping. Now, today and tomorrow we have the 5th round of negotiations. Now we have in the 3rd and 4th round, we have changed a little bit because there was more political negotiations than the first, where every delegation wanted to express what they want and they expect from the negotiations. Then there was Ambassador Simon Karam. Maybe some of you know him. He was the ambassador of Lebanon in the United States in 92, 93. At that time, I was in the embassy here with him. I was number 2 at the embassy when he was number 1. And he has been in charge by President Aoun to negotiate with the Israelis. We had also last time, at the last round, we had also a military negotiations where they met, the 2 delegations, 2 military delegations, met in the Pentagon. Now, yesterday, there was a civilian, political and military delegations meeting in the State Department. Tomorrow, the meetings will focus on only military, and the day after tomorrow will be political in the presence of the military. So far, of course, we're not expecting any result, especially after we hear the statements coming from Israel, statements from Benjamin Netanyahu himself, who says that we will never withdraw from what he calls the security zone, safety zone, whatever he calls it. And even his right-wing colleagues in the cabinet who say they want to occupy Lebanon, they want to destroy Lebanon, they want to do this and that. So we are not very optimistic. And these statements, I personally think, are addressed to the Israeli audience, while the Israeli ambassador in the United Nations say, we don't want to occupy Lebanon, we don't want to stay in Lebanon, because he is talking to international community, to the people who support Lebanon, who don't want to see Israel occupying Lebanon. We really don't know what might happen at the end of these negotiations. I don't think they will end very soon, because it is sort of connected with the negotiations that are taking place in Switzerland, which should last about 2 months. So we will see how things will develop. But in the meantime, I personally am not optimistic about the future of what's going on. And we must also say that in 2006, there was clashes between Hezbollah and Israel. At the end of that, there was United Nations intervened, and there was a United Nations Security Council resolution, which is called Resolution 1701, in which Hezbollah agreed to not stay south, to not have any presence south of the Litani River. Now Israel is trying, afterwards we saw that Hezbollah was there anyway. Israel now occupies South Lebanon, most of the areas towards the Litani. Many people think that they want the water of the Litani. I remember very well when there was the change in the regime in Syria about a year and a half ago. Netanyahu went to Jabal al-Sheikh, Mount Hermon, and from there he made a speech in which he said, we are now starting the establishment of the Greater Israel. He repeated this sentence when they started their war lately against Lebanon. He is taking this, they are talking of this. And I'm sure many of you have heard the ambassador of the United States in Israel supporting the idea of the Greater Israel. And when President Trump spoke with Netanyahu and told the press that without the United States, Israel would not exist, his ambassador in Israel was saying that without Israel, the United States would not exist. And nobody said anything. The president, I think he said exactly the opposite of the president. And sometimes we wonder, is he the president or is that the policy of the president? But anyway, I don't want to take more of your time. I will let Dr. Ghareeb speak about also the Palestinian and the negotiations and the other things, and then I will be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to touch briefly on a couple of issues. One that has to do with the Iran conflict, Iran-US-Israel conflict. And I will also then touch on the Palestinian conflict. President Trump, of course, emerged when he was in Versailles, and he announced victory in a way, and that after the 106-day war with Iran. The agreement, in principle, signified that the conflict had truly ended, and actually the words that the president used were stronger than those made by Secretary Rubio. The administration portrayed the conflict as a triumph, the result of a decisive military victory. There's no doubt that Iran suffered a great deal. Much of its infrastructure was destroyed. Many of its military headquarters also were attacked and destroyed or damaged badly. The leaders of Iran, political leaders, religious leaders, and the nuclear scientists, girls' schools were attacked, and many people died as a result. There's no doubt that there's been a large number of civilians who died as a result of the conflict. Nevertheless, Iran seems to have been able to show resilience, and I think probably the Iranians learned from the lessons of the war of last June, when the United States and Israel attacked Iran, and I think they prepared for the worst, and that's what allowed them to launch some heavy attacks, not only against some of the U.S. bases in the region, in the Gulf region, and later on, but against the Israeli infrastructure, various facilities, including military facilities, including some of the nuclear research institutions, and a number of others. In addition to all of this, of course, there was the issue of Hormuz Strait, and I'm sure all of you know how this issue became not only an Iranian, American, or Iranian Gulf, but it became overnight an international issue because of the Iranians basically not just were able to close the straits, although the U.S. later also added its own closure. And nevertheless, this had a tremendous impact on the economy of not only of the countries in the region, but of the world as a whole. And I think that was maybe one of the main factors which led to the change of the positions of the United States government, of a number of other countries, and quickly added to the efforts that were being made by a number of regional players as well as international ones to reach an end to this war, which was extremely costly, and for all intents and purposes, disastrous for many countries in the region as well as others. The war with Iran, in a way, exposed the fragility of being able for the United States, the fragility of the situation and the ability of the United States to defend its allies in the region. That is likely to have long-term consequences down the road. However, I think in the wake of the war, there have been friendly nations who are reassessing the risks associated with supporting the American war effort in the region. And we have seen a number of people who are in the region who are beginning to have second thoughts. Now, some of the Gulf countries find themselves in a very difficult situation, whether between the United States and Iran. Some of them are reaching out to Iran, in fact, and that is quite a significant development. I think in this context, the U.S. administration's contradictions and regarding the war, its status, the cost, the justifications, the resolution, are raising a lot of questions in the United States. We have seen people such as Lindsey Graham and Senator Graham, who's been one of the closest friends and allies of the president, criticizing him, and a number of other hawks in the Senate and in the House, criticizing the president and his agreement, is reaching an agreement with Iran. And while some of them have left the door open by saying that, yes, they support diplomacy, but I think many are also maybe preparing to take tougher stands on this issue and oppose U.S. policy in the area. But one of the consequences of this war that is quite interesting in some ways is that at the beginning of the conflict, the Gaza war, when Hamas attacked Israeli targets and civilians, at the same time, we began to, although at that time many people believed also that that the Israeli government was aware, actually, of the attack beforehand. There's still a lot of debate about this issue, but that was one of the interesting points that were mentioned at that time. And of course, the numbers of people who were killed, and it's unfortunate that any civilians are killed anywhere, regardless of their ethnic background or identity, religious background, whatever. Nevertheless, I think that was a very important development that was used by the Israelis leadership to escalate their attacks against Gaza and against the Palestinian people. In many ways also, one of the interesting things that has happened recently that I've begun to notice, and I would like later to hear from you or from others, see what you think about this issue as well, is that the war against Iran seemed to divert diplomatic and international attention from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, even as the situation on the ground continued to deteriorate. I think this is a very important issue. What we are seeing now is while immediately after the war, even we began to see sympathy, much sympathy and support. In fact, for the first time in history, we saw more support over the past couple of years for the Palestinians in the United States, and especially among the young people, than any previous time in history. And that was a very, very, I think, significant development. But despite the subsiding of the large-scale fighting in Gaza, the Israeli military operations continue. Reconstruction efforts remain stalled. And no effective governance structure, although despite what we've heard about the board of peace, I think Saeed has a very, very powerful article, very interesting article today about the role of peace, and he may want to make a few comments on it later on. But I think this is very, very useful, very important to follow this. The situation in the West Bank also has deteriorated amidst continued settlement expansion, escalating settler violence, and basically we're seeing that the war on Iran was not detached from the Palestinian issue. Rather, it stemmed from a broader regional escalation rooted in the unresolved Palestinian conflict. In fact, many of the conflicts that we have witnessed over the past since 1948, I would say had roots with the Palestinian conflict, Palestinian-Israeli conflict. At that time, it was often described as the Arab-Israeli conflict, although the U.S. administration under President Trump during his early period of governance, he basically took very significant steps. He shut down the American consulate in Jerusalem. This consulate is one of the oldest consulates in the region, in the Middle East. The embassy was moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and aid also was stopped, humanitarian aid, or delayed. And there were a number of other steps. I think the offices of the PLO also were closed. And so this was a very, very significant step. And later on, of course, the president withdrew at the same time from the Iran JPOA agreement, which was many considered it a very significant agreement because it really had kept a close eye over Iranian efforts to build nuclear weapons. But the administration's focus on Iran, basically, and the Strait of Hormuz, has narrowed the political space available to advance Gaza's reconstruction, Palestinian governance, and the broader diplomatic process. Public opinion, of course, as I mentioned earlier, regarding Israel has deteriorated significantly in the United States, particularly among Democrats, young Republicans. But interestingly, apparently we're now hearing more and more from even some of the supporters of the president, Republicans, MAGA supporters, and basically was adopting a very critical position of the administration, both on the Palestinian issue and on the war with Iran. I think there's been another issue, though, that's basically also hurting the Palestinian question, and this is that regional politics have become increasingly fragmented. We're seeing the fact that the various positions adopted by some of the regional governments before the war contributed to this. In addition to this, we saw also an effort to get many of the countries in the region, the Arab countries, adopt the Abrahamic Accords, and in the hope that that would end in many ways the Palestinian conflict, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. What we are seeing more and more is that Palestinian situation is getting actually from bad to worse. I just saw some pictures of Gaza. It looked like a whole area of just tents. And this reminded a friend of mine who pointed me, who showed me this picture. He said he remembered, this is a Palestinian friend, he said he remembered the tents that Palestinians lived in after 1948 and even after 1967. So I don't want to take too much time, and we'll talk more about this issue or whatever you want to talk about or to raise later. But I just want to say that now one of the things is that as long as Palestinians remain hungry, remain refugees, facing expulsion from their own homes, we're facing takeover of their properties. I think and the marginalization of this issue, I think we are likely to see more and more conflicts and down the road in the region and beyond. And thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Massoud. Thank you, Edmund. I'm going to be posing some questions to both speakers, not many, so I will not take your opportunity to raise and ask all the questions you want. But I also see many friends in this hall. Thank you, Lana. And I just want to recognize Ellen Siegel, a great humanitarian who has been in this, before. She was in Beirut, during the siege of Beirut in 1982. I'm sorry, I could not recognize you, and many others. And of course, I see Brian Barber, a great historian, who wrote about Gaza, probably one of the most seminal works on Gaza of all times. And I'm sure his book is here somewhere. So please, don't be shy. Purchase a copy, because it will definitely. It's a road map to what happened in 2023 and thereafter. I know you mentioned the border peace. Let me. Before I pose my questions, since you sort of pushed me into this, I will say that I don't know how many of you are aware of the border peace, but it's a scam, and it's a scheme, and basically the intent is really, to go around and about to basically destroy any concept of Palestinian self-determination. That's the whole idea. We all remember that, in February 2025 Netanyahu came on his first visit, one of like maybe 9 visits and so on, or 10, to the White House. And then, lo and behold, Trump came up with this great idea that he wants to turn Gaza into, the Middle Eastern Riviera, And ever since then, we saw, I don't want to go through because everybody's aware of what has happened. But the idea of the border peace that was launched in, I guess last February here in Washington, in the presence of many others, with great fanfare and a lot of promises that basically just a lot of BS, baloney. We have these pledges. This is, this entity or this government pledges this $1 billion here and $1 billion there and so on. And of course, the Palestinians will never see any of that money. So it is all a scam. And they basically appointed a high commissioner for the Palestinian, someone I know very well, Nikolai Mladenov, who's really anti-Palestinian. I mean, you can't, this is probably best describes him. He's against anything that is, consistent with Palestinian self-determination, Palestinian aspiration, and so on. He was always coming to the UN. And, funny enough, because I was the spokesperson for the United Nations in Iraq, and he came thereafter to be the ambassador of the UN in Iraq and so on. So I've gotten to know him. And, when he was the UN person to the Palestinian territories, as they called it, he basically always was forwarding the Israeli story, the Israeli narrative, never talked about Palestine. So this whole thing is a scam. And now, I remember my last encounter with a spokesperson for the State Department. And I asked him, I asked about where do we stand with the border peace and so on. Because the Financial Times published an article that said they have zero money in their account. So I asked him about that. He said, well, we have two accounts. One account has money, one account. Of course, it's nonsense. It's baloney. So it is a scam, and it's going to be probably, will end up in the trash heap of history, like many other efforts to really deprive the Palestinians of their citizenship. But that's a different issue altogether. Now we're gonna, when it's your turn, we will have a group of our young comrades, very energetic. They have the mics. They will come to you and give you the microphone, correct? So and then you can pose your question to whoever you want. But before we begin, I want to ask you a couple of questions. You raised so many things about Lebanon. We talked about the talks. Do you see that these talks will ever result in anything tangible? I mean, it's kind of the oddity, because we raised these issues in the State Department, and they say, the war is only with Hezbollah, Israel and Hezbollah, but the talks are between Israel and Lebanon. They're trying to segment and basically, divide the issue. So how do you see this thing evolving?
Well, let me say that this is the $64 million question, really, because nobody, absolutely nobody can tell where we are going from here. We know that, we think that actually the government of Lebanon thinks that if they go with the negotiations with Israel, the price that Lebanon is paying would be a little bit less than the price of keeping going to war, refusing to negotiate with Israel. That's what the government thinks. That's what the president thinks. But as we know now, they are talking, I think it's only, for the time being, it's only talks. My point of view is that Netanyahu has a big problem inside Israel, and his only way to get out of the problem is by continuing wars in the area, because he has a lot of problems with the courts. He now has some immunity because he is prime minister. On the 27th of October, there will be elections in Israel. And if the Likud party doesn't win the elections, and as it looks now, it doesn't seem that they are going to win the election. And if he is not, he will not come back again as prime minister. And there is a strong chance that he will go to jail. So he wants to avoid all that by showing the Israeli electorate that he's doing a wonderful job in protecting Israel. He even exaggerates the danger of Hezbollah to show that, see how I am doing, how I have been killing them, how I have been protecting you, and things like that. And that's why I don't have a lot of hopes. What they are talking about now especially on the military level in these negotiations, is to create some pilot zones. Pilot zones are zones in South Lebanon, where the army, Lebanese army, will be in charge, small period, a village or two, a small area, and then the army will say that there are no Hezbollah, no weapons in that area outside the government. And then when Israel accepts that, then they will go to another zone and they will create another pilot zone. And the problem with that between the Lebanese delegation and the Israeli delegation is that the Israelis want to have the zones in areas that are not occupied by them. They want them to go in places, while the Lebanese delegation insists on, no, you have to leave an area that you have, just vacate this area, and let the Lebanese army be in charge of that. And all these things is just talks, I think. I am not very optimistic. I'm sorry to say that, but I am not optimistic with these, especially because of Netanyahu. Otherwise, I don't know if there was another Israeli prime minister, if things would look better. But as things look now, I have no hope that soon we will be out of the tunnel. Of course, now speaking of the tunnel, there are a lot of tunnels. They found a lot of tunnels, and here we speak a lot of deep state, deep government, deep something. In Lebanon, when they say deep state, they mean the deep underground, the Hezbollah. That's what they mean when they say that in Lebanon. But to answer your question in 2 words, I'm not very optimistic.
Okay, so let me ask you this. The vice president, yesterday, he said something very interesting about, how this agreement with Iran is basically a region-wide agreement, which the implicit message is it includes Lebanon. On the other hand, you mentioned that the Israelis, they keep saying, we're going to stay in Lebanon, we're going to build settlements in Lebanon, we're going to stay all the way to the Litani, we're going to stay in the Beaufort Castle, and all that stuff. So do you see this eventually as something, because they keep insisting this is region-wide. So do you see that Israel will ultimately basically pull out, or as they said today, they're going to scale back their position? I'm sorry. Thank you for. Yeah, I'm always getting away from the microphone. Okay. Thank you. All right. So yeah.
Yes, it's hard to say. It's hard to say what will happen in this situation. I don't know if they will eventually have to withdraw somehow. Most of the countries in the world, the countries that support Israel, Britain, Great Britain, France, Italy, and the United States, they all ask Israel to withdraw, and then they add a sentence after they ask Israel to withdraw that Lebanon should get rid of Hezbollah. So there's always this equation. And getting rid of Hezbollah is not something that we can do like sign a paper, write something on paper, and it is done. Hezbollah is the Shiite party in Lebanon, and we have to talk religiously and confessionally. They are about a third of the population of Lebanon. The Shiites now are about the third of the population. And most of the Shiites, not all of them, are Hezbollah. How can you cancel this part of the population and just... I think the answer to that question is not in Lebanon, it's in Iran. For the simple question that Hezbollah is very connected to Iran. They are more connected to Iran than they are connected to Lebanon, religiously on one side, but also politically. And that is why I think that if talks are taking place with Iran, it all depends on whether Iran will stop support its allies or proxies, or I don't know what to call them in the area, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iraq, the Houthiyyin in Yemen, and others. In this case, in Lebanon, probably there would be a possibility to change a little bit the situation that is overwhelmingly covering the whole issues at the time being now. But otherwise, I don't think from within Lebanon, with Hezbollah, we can change it. And I don't think with Israel will withdraw overnight from Lebanon and say, okay. And what Israel is asking from Lebanon is normalization. Not quite the Abraham Accords, but why not we normalize? We have regular relations. Lebanon cannot do that, not only for just general political reasons and that, because in 2002, in August 2002, there was an Arab summit in Beirut, and then there was a decision taken by the Arab summit in Beirut that said that all Arab countries, it was a unanimous decision, all Arab countries are ready to normalize relations with Israel, to have ambassadors, change diplomatic relations, everything, if Israel would withdraw from the West Bank, from the area, allows the Palestinian state to exist, and allows the Palestinians who are away to return to their country. With this, how can Lebanon now go beyond something that happened in this land, in Beirut, in its capital, and say, okay, we will normalize relations with Israel? And this is what they're insisting. The Israelis are insisting. Lebanon now, in these negotiations, we are asking them to withdraw, first of all, to consolidate ceasefire, and then to withdraw, while they are insisting themselves on normalizing their relations with Lebanon. So,
well, basically, the Americans, very quick question, quick answer. The Americans want the Lebanese army to fight Hezbollah, and this is really an old story. I mean, that back in the Civil War in the 70s, they also wanted the Lebanese army to fight al-Muqawama, the Palestinians and the Lebanese national movement and so on. Is this ever, or could it happen?
The current president of the Republic, who is proposing also the negotiations with Israel, was the head of the Lebanese army for 7 or 8 years. And during that time, when Lebanon was divided, when there were problems in Lebanon, very deep problems, the army was united. Never had there been any problem within the army, although the army, a third of the army, of the troops of Lebanon, are Shiites. So things. This is a quick answer.
Very good answer. Edmund, I want to ask you, of course, a couple of questions on your presentation. Can you hear me, everybody? Yeah. Okay. First, we're talking about 60 days of negotiation. I mean, there was so much confusion a couple of days ago on the inspectors going in and so on. And we had inspectors all throughout that were going into these places in Iran and so on, looking at the amount of enriched uranium, what they do in their facilities and so on. What do we expect at the end of these 60 days?
That's a very good question. That raises question also, first of all, about this agreement. How strong is this agreement, or how fragile is it, in fact? I think this agreement is fragile in many ways. I think there are a lot of questions raised. I mean, first of all, one of them is Lebanon was actually, and that's in the first article in this agreement, that Iran said that they would not, Israel has to withdraw from Lebanon before any agreement would take place. But the point as to the nuclear issue, I think the nuclear issue is to a large extent is a justification for the war, basically. I don't think Iran had agreed to the JCPOA, and President Trump pulled out of it. There were inspectors by the nuclear agency, international, and they were on the ground. So, but what I'm thinking about is actually I'm wondering, and this could be concerning issue, is that Iran may be doing or may be pursuing the path of North Korea. North Korea, when there was a lot of pressure on North Korea to stop building a nuclear weapon, to allow the International Atomic Agency to, North Korea refused. In fact, they escalated. They built, and they ultimately, when they were pressured, the more they were pressured, the more they moved towards building a nuclear weapon. And today we don't see the threats we used to see aimed at North Korea. And I think one of the dangerous things of what's happening now, but also that if Iran is pushed too far when they were, some people believe that they are very close to it. If they were pushed to build a nuclear weapon, this is going to drive other countries in the region and beyond to build nuclear weapons. And that is
especially now that you have a mutual defense agreement with Pakistan, between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, and Pakistan is the nuclear power.
Exactly. I mean, there are other countries in the region which may want to build their nuclear arsenal in a way, and because if that's the best way to survive or to protect yourself. And so this is one of the dangers, I think, that that's good. But there have been reports that I don't know how accurate they are yet, but I'm sure maybe is that the Iranians have agreed to reduce the percentage of when the original agreement was, it was 3.67%.
Right.
But then it reached 60%. So there has been a report that the Iranians might agree to reduce it to somewhere about 20 or 15%. If that's the case, that's, I think, a very important development, and maybe could lead to a little bit of a calming of the situation. Would be one of the areas where they could reach an agreement. So you might see the light at the end of the tunnel then, but there's a danger that you might see at the end of the light, you might see the tunnel.
Let me ask you something. You and I do media, and we are media people. Why is Israel and Netanyahu being let off the hook in the discussion? I mean, if you get on the cable news, CNN, MSNBC, and others, they talk about how Trump went into this war, this unnecessary war, and so on. While we know that in a new book called Regime Change by Maggie Haberman and John Swan, they say it was actually Netanyahu. I mean, he went in there and he convinced Trump on the 11th of February and so on. And in fact, the CIA did a report. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane did told them this is not going to work. Rubio, called it just malarkey. It's more than that, as a matter of fact, and farcical and so on. Yet we are not, we're not seeing that Israel being, spotlighted as the driving force behind this war.
Today there was a report, by the way, that Israel has reached out to Meta to suppress anything that's critical of Israel,
right,
or sympathetic to the Palestinians, which is quite interesting. And this is not the only thing, but we're beginning to see. We saw also where figures who are pro-Israeli purchased TikTok, for example.
right.
But one of the reasons, maybe part of it is, at least, is that the media, the social media, played a major role in changing the attitudes of many people in the United States, not only in the United States, but worldwide. And that's why you are seeing today so many countries, in fact, countries that have in the past supported Israel, and very closely, especially in Europe, countries like Germany, like Britain, France, to a certain extent, are becoming very critical of the Israelis. And but you've seen also countries such as Ireland, Spain, who have always adopted a very strong position critical of Israel, but that's a little bit different. But the main thing is that I think this goes to the influence of Israel in the United States. Israelis have strong supporters, and these supporters play an important role in U.S. politics. They contribute a great deal of financial support, political support, activism, to support those candidates who favor Israel and support Israel. We saw what happened to Congressman Massey,
Right.
For example, and how much money was spent to defeat him.
$32 million.
$30-something million.
You can touch, I mean, it's, yeah.
So that's basically, I think, one of the factors. But I think Netanyahu, on the one hand, I agree with what Ambassador Maalouf was mentioned, is that he's very much worried. First of all, he has his own ambitions, yes. I mean, the Israeli ambitions of a greater Israel. And we have heard this not only from him, but we heard it even more so from some of his ministers, people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. Who want, actually, they want to go in Lebanon, they want to go to not only keep the Shiva farms, which they have been controlling for quite a while, but they want to go up to the Litani River, and some say that may have something to do with the oil and gas that's on the Mediterranean in that area. So that's another factor. You have they are 15 kilometers away from Damascus, and they're not willing to give up the Golan Heights either. So, I mean, and then the map that Netanyahu carried to the United Nations, which showed that he wants parts of Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq. Yes. And so, and the right wing, I mean, General Katz, Defense Minister Katz, actually, basically told the soldiers, you can go and do and act freely in South Lebanon. Before him, Ben-Gvir said that why don't you should get all the women and all the children and bring them back here. I mean, this is really, I mean, it's shocking when you see some of the people in the mainstream media not looking at these issues and what Israel has done, what happened in Gaza. I mean, Gaza, about a year ago, the Lancet said the number of dead and wounded is close to 2 million.
Yes.
I mean, that is, and this was a year ago, and yet it's taking place now, it's continuing. Yesterday, or I think the day before, a student, a girl who was 16, going to school to get to take her exam, was killed.
Yeah. Well, they do this on a daily basis, but I tell you what, it's becoming more fashionable to support the Palestinians, as we have seen yesterday in New York City, and passé to support a criminal entity like Israel. So now I'm going to turn to you. You can raise your arm, and then you will get. They do this, I think, once a month. Okay, so that there you go. So Trump likes this, and so on. So please raise your question, and we will have someone come to the microphone with you. I have right there, and then I have right there. 1, 2, and 3. No, okay, and 3. All right. So we'll have the microphone right there.
Okay, we can
The
hear you.
microphones are not working?
No, he was the first.
Okay. Oh, you have it? Okay, you go first. Okay. You have the microphone. What can we do?
She gave it to me, so I didn't.
You hold the power in
was
your hand.
consented. Yeah, thank you
Speak up,
for
please.
thank you for your talk. I'm Lebanese from the south. My family has lost a lot, and I appreciate your service all these years, Ambassador Maalouf. However, I have to say that there's a disconnect in your sort of analysis in terms of your critique of Israel and putting in the context of the Palestinian struggle and a real sort of soft pedaling of the government, the Lebanese government. I mean, for a Lebanese government to, Hezbollah might be a proxy for Iran, but they've, played a role in preventing our lands from being taken away. This government is becoming a proxy for Trump and Netanyahu, some of the worst, most evil people on earth right now. And that's what these negotiations are doing. And, you served under Ambassador Ghareeb. I'm interested to hear what goes through a man's head who comes at a time like this and negotiates in the Pentagon with the U.S. and Israel. I mean, how is that possibly? So it's really crucial right now for people not to see just Israel as the real enemy. There is inside Lebanon Zionists who are playing a real heavy toll on us.
Ambassador?
Well, I appreciate your point of view, but I personally don't think that everyone who speaks about peace in Lebanon is either a Zionist or a stooge of Israel, a stooge of Netanyahu. There are some people in Lebanon. You know, Lebanon is now divided. There is a good portion of the Lebanese population with Hezbollah and another good portion of the Lebanese population against Hezbollah they want peace, they want to live normally, they don't care about Israel, they don't care about Iran, they care about their country. And I don't think we should call them Zionists. I think it is not a fact. They don't want, there are some people, but they are not the majority. They are a very small minority who want to have good relations with Israel and who are happy with what Israel is doing to Hezbollah. But they are a small minority. But a good portion of the people who are against Hezbollah, they are not Zionists, they are not pro-Israeli, they are not stooges. And the president of Lebanon is not a stooge of President Trump or of Netanyahu. He is thinking of Lebanon. As I said earlier, for more than 7 or 8 years, he was the head of the army, and he was able to keep the army united while the whole country was divided, where there was problems in the country. So I have really, I don't think that President Aoun maybe he doesn't have all the tools to save Lebanon, but he is trying to see what he can do, and he is convinced, and he has said it many times, himself and the Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, they both said that negotiations don't mean that we are submitting everything to the others, but negotiations, the price we pay with negotiations is much less than the price that we would pay without negotiations. With relations to Ambassador Karam, I was with him here in the year 92, 93, and since the year 1993, that makes a long time, I haven't seen him, I haven't talked to him, and I don't know what goes in his mind at the moment.
Thank you. We have right there. Yeah, please give it there's a microphone.
Yes, hi. My question is for Professor Ghareeb. The Board of Peace was raised in this discussion, and that, it's so Orwellian, just the name Board of Peace. It just sounds bizarre. And I just wanted to ask, I guess I have a two-part question. There's been this fluff up in the media about this new Shangri-La that Kushner is planning in Albania.
Yeah.
And the outrage over that, the public outrage, I think might possibly help dampen any kind of enthusiasm for this post-genocide Riviera that he's planning in Gaza. So I guess my question, first of all is, do you think there's any chance that it can succeed? And what is the best way to stop this adventure? Will it stop when Trump leaves office? Or do you think it will continue? And then the other question that is, I guess, somewhat related is, I'm sure you've heard a lot of pundits say that Israel, having been shut out of the MOU process with Iran, will want to take out its frustration and impotence by smashing Gaza mercilessly. Not that it's shown any mercy earlier, but that the Palestinian people, probably in the West Bank too, will really, really suffer out of Israel's frustration. What can be done about this? Will Hezbollah join the Palestinian resistance, or are the Palestinians once again alone in all of this?
Both of these are very, very good questions, very important ones, because what we have seen, you're right, when you referred to the possibility of, again, basically, controlling or gaining control of the sea coast of Gaza. Because Kushner said that this area is worth $23 billion. And, that's where the Riviera was supposed to be built also. So, it's certainly worrisome, because right now the Israelis are continuing to expand in Gaza. They controlled over 50%. Now I hear it's more about 53, 50, 70%. Because the last figure I saw was something like 59%. But I don't. This is really scary when you think of it, especially if Gaza is left alone. And this is why I thought that what Saeed was talking about this, what's happening to the border peace, because if the border peace doesn't seem to be it's really seemed to be working to satisfy the Israelis and the U.S. administration in many ways, and so that's why there's a great deal of concern about what's likely to happen in Gaza. I mean, the Israelis clearly what they wanted from the beginning is to expel the Palestinians from Gaza. They wanted to, even if they could, expel as many of the people that they could expel to the West Bank. I think it's obvious that there are many within the right-wing Israeli factions which are very around Netanyahu. Actually, they are even moved to the right of Netanyahu. People like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and many others. These people, I think, are determined to, they want, yesterday there was one of the officials who was being interviewed on one of the programs, and she said, when the questions were raised about the idea of Israeli expansion and continuing to control territory in Lebanon and Syria and Gaza and the West Bank, she said, it must be it's from the Nile to the Euphrates. Just saying it publicly, I mean, even if you believe it, that's quite something. But I think there is beginning to be concern among the Israelis, and that's why we saw the statements that some of the people like some of the Israeli officials who basically were very critical of the steps taken and by President Trump and the statements made by Trump and especially by Undersecretary Vance. Who have criticized Israel. Vance said some very interesting things. Basically, he said that about 2/3 of the weapons were made by Americans. That he said that most of the money, actually, a lot of the money was going to Israel. It was also American money. And he said, you're attacking the Americans for criticizing them for that. So I think that is, there is change in the United States. Is this change sufficient? That's where I'm not sure myself. But is this change that's taking place, will it be sufficient to bring about that kind of changes that are needed now? Or will it be something that will happen down the road? I mean, when you have somebody like Ambassador Huckabee, I think you mentioned that, and he says, it's not that he was criticizing his president. I mean, basically, he said that America wouldn't be there without Israel if Israel wasn't there. I mean, when you think of, and yet nothing was said about it. Nevertheless, you're beginning to get some people, including in the MAGA movement, actually people who are really quite critical of what's going on and of the Israeli policies. So I think we'll have to wait and see how. But a lot will depend on how this war, also in Iran, with Iran, ends.
I have a quick comment and then I'll turn to you. I promise. A quick comment. The whole Iran thing was schemed by Netanyahu. Netanyahu has been prime minister since 1996. And he knew if you, just deflect from what's going on to the Palestinians, then he can grab all the land they want. It's all for settlement. It's all for the West Bank. I mean, it was just a fig leaf. And he kept pushing. I mean, I listened to Hillary Clinton the other day, and she was saying he came to us, and he was telling us, and then one day they told him, in fact, that the planes are on the tarmac, they're ready to attack. And she said, good luck, Godspeed, go do it. In other words, we will not go along with you. So all along, I mean, after the occupation of Iraq, and I know a little bit about that area because I went there, I was there, the Iranians made very clear they really have no interest in nuclear weapons. They don't want it. And they said, look, they went to the Americans and said, now you are our next door neighbors. Let's have peace and so on. We'll work together. And they worked very well together in Iraq. So the whole thing really is schemed. You keep pushing until you finally quote Hillary Clinton, found someone who's willing to go on. Thank you. It's your question.
Thanks. I'm Haytham Al-Khatib, professor of mathematics at the University of Baltimore. I have two questions. The first question, many observers argue that the war has fundamentally changed the way the Palestinian question is viewed internationally. In your assessment, what are the most significant political shifts that have emerged since October 2023? And which of them are likely to have lasting consequences? And my second question, Lebanon faces economic crisis, political fragmentation, and security pressure along its southern border. How can Lebanon support the Palestinian cause while also protecting its own stability and rebuilding state institutions? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with this question, directed to you. And on Lebanon, then we'll go to your first question.
Well,
Yeah, the question on.
I'll start with Lebanon.
Yes.
Well, how Lebanon can help the Lebanese, the Palestinian question when it is in such a situation now? Well, as you know, Professor, now Lebanon cannot even help itself. That's the big problem now. So how can it help the population of Palestine? You know, in Lebanon, we have almost 1 million Palestinians now. Out of the 5 million population in Lebanon, about 1,850,000 to 1 million, the estimates are. And a little more than that, Syrians also. And Lebanon is under a lot of pressure, with not only economic crisis, but also political, also with what is happened, and we have been talking about the whole evening tonight. So the only thing that Lebanon can do with the Palestinian question is in international arenas, in the United Nations, in the Arab League, support whenever there are decisions to be taken. Lebanon should, and it always do it, support anything that is pro-Palestinian. On the ground, I don't think there is anything Lebanon at the moment now can do. In the past, Lebanon has done a lot with Lebanon. It has received all the Palestinians. There have been a lot of support, financial support, a lot of support in schools also, in many respects. So the Palestinians, what they call the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, have been really receiving a good support from the government and from the Lebanese population in general. Of course, there have been a lot of frictions, sometimes a lot of problems, especially since 75, since the year 1975, when we had also another civil war, and some people were pro-Palestinian, others anti-Palestinian, and things like that. But in general, at the moment now, Professor, to answer your question, in Lebanon, I don't think that the Lebanese can do anything for the Palestinian cause. They can do it in international arena, Arab League, also in the United Nations, and probably talking about Palestine with other Arab countries supporting the Palestinian cause. But other than that, I really don't see what Lebanon can do.
Well, Lebanon has always been supportive of the Palestinian cause. Lebanon offered its land, its people, for the cause of Palestine. I mean, I'm a person of the 70s and the 80s and so on. Lebanon was always, and it will always be in the forefront in the struggle for the liberation of Palestine. It will never shy away.
Yeah.
The Lebanese, I mean, you talk about some Lebanese that harbor some ill will towards the Palestinians. The fact of the matter that in my life, I probably, met maybe a handful of Lebanese who are not thoroughly pro-Palestinian.
Yeah, I understood your question. I think what we are seeing is, I think, is very significant. We haven't seen anything like this in terms of the support for the Palestinian cause, if this is what you were asking about. I mean, this is really unprecedented. I remember when, I think it was either the Prime Minister or the President of Ireland came here under President Biden, during President Biden. It was after the events started in Gaza. And somebody asked a question, about what's happening there. And the Prime Minister, the Irish Prime Minister or President, basically said, he said, what's happening in Gaza reminds us of what happened to us. We were forced out of our land. We were killed. We were discriminated against. We were forced to leave our territories, our cities. We were forced even to change and sometimes change our names. This is what the Irish Prime Minister said. I mean, that is something, and he said, we see our history repeated before our eyes in Gaza.
And I think you said that in the White House.
Oh,
You
yes.
said that in the White
Yes,
House.
and the
Absolutely.
president had his head
down. Yeah.
down. I mean, it was quite. But, however, as long as you have support from, if you still have the support from the United States, although that is beginning to change. I mean, if you take a look at what's been happening, even as I said within MAGA, not just, but within the Democratic. I just saw a poll not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, that 37% of evangelical Christian youth, and the evangelicals are the ones who have been supporting Israel also, is 37% have changed their points of view. They are more sympathetic now to the Palestinians than previous. I mean, that again is something very, very unusual when you think of it. But the problem is sometimes, unfortunately, Arabs, Palestinians, and their supporters are not well organized to benefit, to achieve, to benefit from this change that we are seeing. But I think in the long run, I think this is people in the end are witnessing. They witnessed what was happening in Gaza. They witnessed what's happening in Lebanon, and I think that has changed their attitudes and the way they looked at the situation as a whole.
Also, keep in mind that as long as there are Palestinians and in Palestine, the struggle continues. It will not abate. I mean, it goes through ebb and flow, but it's always there. I mean, the Palestinians have been fighting since the 1920s. There's nothing has changed. It goes, there are international support, and this recedes and so on. There's Arab support, then this recedes and so on. But the Palestinians themselves, look at them today. They are, instead of being driven out, there are actually more Palestinians. There's probably more Palestinians today between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea than Jewish Israelis. I mean, including, of course, 20% of Israel's population that are Palestinian. So this is the base. That's what frustrates Israel, because, they keep saying, I mean, we all remember, or my generation remembers, Israeli politicians saying this generation will die, about the generation that, fled or was driven out of Palestine. And then the others will not forget. I mean, you talk to a kid from, Phoenix, Arizona, or from Clinton, Iowa, and you ask him, where are you from? And he would say, I'm a Palestinian. I mean, this is the thing, that the Palestinians are not going to give up on their homeland. They realize that this is, an aberration. This is not, it is not religious. I mean, Israel may be the ethno-state or the ultimate ethno-state and so on, but it's not an issue of, religious connections and so on, despite what you believe in, whether Christian, Muslim, or, or Jewish, or, a non-believer and so on. The fact of the matter, this is a colonial movement. It's a colonial movement. It came into being at a time when colonialism is dying. And so will this, huge hemorrhage in human decency and human history. Thank you. Any more questions? Go ahead. Yes, we'll come to you. Right here, please, right there. Lana,
She
you
has
have
the
mic?
microphone. Over there,
Ah,
she has
okay.
the microphone.
All right, they know how to expropriate the microphone. So that's good for you. Please speak up. Yes, I can.
I don't hear you.
You can't speak a bit louder? We still don't hear you. Stand up.
Hello?
and-
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Just wanted to speak to the issue of the negotiations between Lebanon and Israel. And I think, the big concern is that Israel is basically defying the narrative of what the negotiation is about in terms of the enemy is, or the problem is Hezbollah, where the reality, and that just gives Israel cover to do what it's doing. The reality is that Israel wants to occupy and colonize Lebanon. Definitely we know up into the Litani River, which they've said, but by blaming and talking about Hezbollah, that just provides cover for that. And I think that's one of the biggest frustrations in terms of the negotiations, is that the Lebanese government is basically conceding to that. And the other thing, I mean, you just see interviews with people, Israelis, that are saying, I feel connected to Lebanon. I want to live in the mountains. They want to occupy it. They want to take it all. And I think that not only is this a problem that the Lebanese government is allowing this narrative to be defined by Israel, but at the present time, Israel is bombing and destroying whole villages, slaughtering people, medics, double tap. They're doing all of this. And what is the Lebanese government saying? I mean, Donald Trump's recent comments about how Israel is heavy-handed and, you know, will drop a bomb on a whole building to kill one Hezbollah spoke to me more than what the Lebanese government is doing. And I think this is where the outrage is that they are going in, they're having videos where they're going into ransacking and pillaging people's homes before they destroy them, cooking in their kitchens, bombing wholesale villages. It's just like, what is the Lebanese government doing? They're coming to Washington and they're negotiating with Israel and allow.
Thank you. That was more of a comment, but if you have.
Well, what you said is a fact. In fact, this is what Israel is doing in Lebanon, and I fully agree with you that Israel is destroying, is causing all this trouble. I retired from the government 16 years ago, so I don't represent the government of Lebanon now. What I say, if I appear as if I am defending the government, it's not that. What I say is what I think is happening on the ground. What I hear from the government, what I hear from the President of the Republic, when they say that if we don't negotiate, President Trump will give the green light to Israel to destroy everything in Lebanon, and we don't have a way to defend Lebanon from that. There is no way. They can cause some trouble to Israel. Hezbollah can, so far they have killed 20 or 30 Israelis, while Israel have killed more than 4,000 people, destroyed 11,000 buildings, completely destroyed. So there is no equality of forces between Israel and Lebanon. So what is left for Lebanon to do? This is what I'm trying to understand and also to explain. So it's not easy when you don't have the force to stop such an aggression. Of course, it's very good to say that we don't accept what Israel is doing. We don't like it. We hate it, and we try to work with the world to stop that. And many countries are supporting us, but unfortunately, they are supporting us only with words, not with facts. They keep arming Israel. They keep sending weapons. They keep supporting Israel in the United Nations and other places. So what is left for the government to do? And we know very well that President Trump wants to announce that he has made a big victory. He has said that I already stopped 8 wars and I'm going to stop the war in Lebanon. And if Lebanon does not accept to come to Washington and to negotiate with Israel, then President Trump will let Israel do whatever they want. We have heard him to try to stop Israel a little bit, put a little bit just some limits on what they are doing. But if the president lets Israel do whatever they want in Lebanon, we know how much they can destruction. I understand our friend from South Lebanon. I understand. I'm sorry for what happened to the family and to the hundreds of thousands of people and of families who have left there. But what can we do? Just say that we want to fight Israel. Israel is a devil and we want to fight them. Okay, we all want to fight them. Do we have the weapons? Do we have the numbers? Do we have the international support? So it's easy to fight with words, but not as easy to fight in fact on the ground. I'm not defending the government of Lebanon, but I'm trying to see the things as I see them. I may be wrong, I don't know, but this is how I personally see. I'm not against Hezbollah, I am not with Hezbollah. I am with Lebanon as a country for all its people from all religions, all political affiliations, and that's what we want, a Lebanon that is free, that is independent, and that where the people can live in peace. That's all we want. That's the point of view.
Well, we all remember that Israel occupied Lebanon before there was even a Hezbollah. In 1982, Israel occupied Lebanon. And they were there for until the year 2000. And they were driven out by force. I mean, this is the fate of all occupying powers. They will be driven out. You can rest assured that the Lebanese people, with limited resources, they will drive this monster out of their land.
Hello. So I lived in Lebanon, in Beirut, from 2017 to 2021. I was there during the revolution and the Beirut blast, and I recognize that I saw the extreme passion of the Lebanese people as they protested against the government, but also for the future of Lebanon. Of course, with the Israeli aggression that has been happening over the past couple of years, and of course throughout the history of Lebanon, Lebanon needs to be able to protect itself. In your opinion, what structural changes need to happen in Lebanon in order to both appease the Lebanese people's complaints about the government, but to also allow Lebanon to be able to protect its sovereignty against Israeli and American aggression?
You want to chime in on? Or you
Go
want
ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Basically, I think, let me say one thing. Unfortunately, one of the things in Lebanon is that there is division in Lebanon. The divisions can be sectarian, religious, tribal, regional. Yeah. It's all of these things. And that's what's so sad about it and makes it very difficult. Nevertheless, I think overall, you find in Lebanon that there are a lot of people who are very unhappy with what's going on now, who are very supportive of the Palestinian cause, because they see it, many of them see that cause as their cause in many ways. But at the same time, I know that there are other people who are facing a very difficult life, and that is a reality too. I mean, and this is what Ambassador Maalouf was saying. But I think overall, I believe that most Lebanese are very sympathetic to the plight of what's happening to the Palestinians, and they are also now feeling it themselves. They are going through the same thing. In fact, that's what I think the Israeli government has. It's part of its purpose, of its objective, is to repeat what has been happening, what happened in Gaza, in the West Bank, what's happening in the West Bank. It happens in South Lebanon. It happens even in some other areas of Lebanon. And that's why there's a need for. I think the Lebanon needs to reform. The government needs to reform. The people need to be also, in many ways, awakened as well to what's going on and the threats that face them and face their country. And one thing about the Lebanese, I remember one time I was there when I first came to the U.S. and I used to go sit with the people who immigrated to the United States very early on. And, one day I was reading, they used to subscribe to the Arabic language newspaper published in New York. And there was a story one time about Lebanese people in the town of Danbury in Connecticut were fighting with each other. And some of them were arrested by the police. So I knew that one person of the people who were there at that time, when people were reading this story, and I said, "Uncle, what's the story? What's happening? Why are these people arrested? Do they have some religious issues, sectarian issues between them?" And what's going on? Are they from different villages or the different factions in villages? He laughed and he said, no. I said, their problem is that they are Lebanese. I said, what do you mean? What's going on? He said, he laughed and then he said, let me tell you something. He said, every one Lebanese is equal to 100 people of any nation on earth. But 100 Lebanese are not equal to one person of any other nation on earth.
They don't know how to work together. Well, he should be proven wrong. So we'll consider that your concluding remarks, and we'll go to you, Ambassador, for maybe 1 minute to give us just a conclusion on this thing.
Okay, I want to remember one thing and talk about you about one thing about Israel per se and negotiations with Israel. In 1999 and 2000, when Israel was occupying also part of Lebanon, a few years before that, the United States and France created what's called the April Understanding. In April of that year, they created April Understanding so that when Israel caused any trouble to Lebanon, Lebanon could ask for a meeting for this April Understanding, which was from United States, France, Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. That was a committee that used to meet whenever there was a complaint. And when Hezbollah also used to throw something on Israel, Israel used to call also to this April Understanding, and I was representing Lebanon. It was a military committee, but every delegation had also a diplomat with them. And I remember very well meeting with the Israelis. Every time we reach sort of an agreement with them on something, and then we take a break, and then the Israelis come back and they ask for more things. You can never satisfy them with anything. You agree, you think that everything has been finalized, and when we will come back after the break, we will write down the final resolution, then they come back and they also ask for more things. That's how difficult they are. That's how difficult it is to negotiate with Israeli. And I understand now our delegation yesterday, today, and tomorrow how they will be negotiating with the Israelis, how difficult their position is. So my position is purely for Lebanon. Whatever situation, I am for. We want Lebanon to be a country that is independent. Of course, I am pro-Palestinian. I have worked in our diplomatic service. All our work was, before we had the war in Lebanon, we were focused on the Palestinian questions. We didn't do we didn't have Lebanese problems internationally. We were always talking about Palestine. We were always working on the Palestinian issue until we started having our problems since the year 1975 and on. So I am a pro-Palestinian, pro-Lebanese person, and pro-Jerusalem Fund. Thank you very much.
Well, you know, you can see that our cause, the Palestinian cause, the Lebanese cause, is a passionate cause, and it has been, you know, addressed passionately. Thank you very much for being here tonight, and hopefully we'll see you again in future events. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for being such an excellent moderator.
Somebody has a question? Absolutely. What is the question? Can we stick around for one question? What is the question? I'm sorry I didn't. Please. Everybody, please sit down. We have to give the courtesy to one questioner, so please, let's have that question.
This is to Ambassador Maalouf. In 1982, as you know, Israel created a security zone in South Lebanon. Then Hezbollah came along, then the withdrawal in 2000. It seems to me that history is repeating itself.
Yeah.
Because now they're creating another security zone. Are we heading into a perpetual cycle of violence? And my second question is, there are elections coming up in October in Israel. Do you think it's going to make any difference, or they're just two sides of the same coin?
Well, I think we are living in a cycle of violence for many, many years. So it's not something new, the cycle of violence in Lebanon, and especially with Israel. And they want to occupy part of Lebanon, and then they withdraw, and they come back, and they withdraw again. This is what's happening in Lebanon. Will it stop at some time? I don't know. Can anybody tell what will happen in the future? I don't think anybody can say what will happen unless there is a solution for the Palestinian question. This is the main issue. Once we solve the Palestinian question, I think the area in Lebanon, the general region, will be in peace. Now, with the elections of Israel, I think that Netanyahu has a very serious problem, as I said earlier. If he changes, if he is not anymore the prime minister, I think there might be, nothing is sure, but there might be that a possibility, because what they are criticizing him is, the opposition, is that he has taken Israel to war, not only with Iran, but also in Lebanon, and he is criticized for what he has done in Lebanon. So maybe if someone else takes power in Israel, maybe but it's a very big question mark, because I don't trust the Israelis, but we always have to hope for some change. But I don't want to say that things will change anytime soon, even if there is a change in Israel. I doubt it. There is a very, very slim chance, but we always hope for that. Let's hope.
We have one last question, one more time. So,
Actually,
and then you have a comment. Okay, we'll come to you after. So it's okay. We're all family here, so it's all right.
actually, I don't have a question.
Comment even. Wonderful. Yeah, let's have a comment.
I mean, we're going in a cycle and we're forgetting what's the plan, Netanyahu's plan, which is called the clean break.
Right. That's
Okay.
true.
And Professor Jeffrey Sachs brings it on every now and then.
Right.
And we're beating around the bush, and the issue is the clean break, which is the big Israel, which is Israel occupying everything, including all the new gas resources in the area. And when the clean break was written or proposed, it was not done only by Netanyahu, it was done by a big chunk of Americans who ended up electing President George Bush II as president, and he launched the new Middle East and all these wars, etc. So it's not only Israel, it's the old MAGA, which is now called MAGA.
Right.
And I think the problem is in the United States, really, because they are the ones who are financing Israel, encouraging Israel, creating Israel, and everything you want to talk about Israel. So unless we get out of this dilemma, there is, I think, no solution. And if we want to survive in Lebanon, there is no survival only with negotiations, because negotiations, you need to have something in your hand. I mean, you don't negotiate and you have nothing. I mean, the Lebanese government, I'm not against the negotiations. I'm against that they rendered Hezbollah as illegal, and they went to negotiate with what? You don't have anything in your hand to negotiate about. Now, Lebanon, about who thinks what, it has been like that since before the creation of Lebanon. I mean, there is a sectarian divide. Some sects think that they own Lebanon, so they don't recognize the rest of the Lebanese as Lebanese, etc., etc., etc. And And I think, unfortunately, unless the Netanyahu plan, which is the clean break, and its support in the US is stopped somehow, okay, I don't think we're going to see any peace in the area. We are the weaker side, so we're going to suffer more, okay, it's right. You mentioned that 4,000
People killed.
killed and 20 killed on the other side. Yes, because Hezbollah does not have these big bombs that he gets from the US, and they throw it indiscriminately on the population, whereas Israel does that, and it's okay. Everything finds it that it's okay. So unfortunately, I don't see any future unless, as I said, and I'm hopeful that as public opinion is changing in the US, hopefully this will have an effect on foreign policy. And then there will be a stop to a Netanyahu, and we go back to the Oslo agreements, which the Israelis refused by killing their own prime minister, and this we have forgotten, okay? And unless this is solved, I don't see neither in Lebanon nor in the whole area any peace whatsoever.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. And last, Ellen.
About 12 refugee camps in Lebanon.
Right.
That Israel is hell-bent on destroying all of the Palestinians.
Sorry.
I think that Israel has already destroyed a few of the camps in the south. If they're going to rid Lebanon of the refugee camps.
What they will do with the camps? Is that what you're saying? I didn't understand. What... Well, they have been. I mean, they attacked the other day. They attacked Al Hilwa, I think, and they attacked. Yeah. So, Israel has been working to erase anything that has anything to do with Palestinian refugees because it sees its illegitimacy as long as Palestinian refugees continue to be there, and they have actually some sort of a geographic expression that is, most prominently expressed in the Lebanese refugee camps, the Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon. Israel will not quit until they destroy the Palestinians, because it is founded on the destruction of Palestinians. We'll see, but they have always failed. Listen, we can probably go on with this discussion for all night long, but we must come to an end. Apologies, so we have to come to an end. We can have our own conversations afterwards, but thank you all. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
This is
Thank you.
really very good.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Be good now. Very good.
I'm trying to get a picture. Steve, could I get a picture? Thank you so much.
Moderating, guiding me to, so guiding us for that. Yeah, facilitating it well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I do want to get Yeah, now I can send it.
أنا اسمي إسرائيل أنا من فلسطين.
إيزابيلا؟ إيزابيلا من وين؟
أنا من نابلس.
من نابلس.
بحكي نابلسي وبحكي بالإمطار. إن شاء الله. إن شاء الله. أنت من وين في فلسطين؟
أنا من